At first, no one really noticed. I mean, Battle Royale maps are designed to feel familiar, but not specific, right? You sprint through a cracked boulevard, loot a rundown building. It's all part of the game. But then, during one late-night match, a player slowed down. He realized the street signs weren't just gibberish or cool-sounding names. They were half-erased letters that still spelled something real, something close enough to home to feel a little uncomfortable. He looked up, and the skyline hit him with this weird sense of déjà vu. The towers were leaning at familiar angles. The bridges were broken in places that felt intentional. He just shook it off. Games borrow aesthetics all the time, no big deal. But later, as the storm pushed everyone toward the center, the island started revealing itself in pieces. One zone unfolded into neon-lit ruins that looked just like Las Vegas. After the lights went out for good, casinos turned into hollowed-out shelters. Slot machines fused into the walls, marquees flickering ads for shows that would never happen again. Another zone collapsed into these. Long, empty streets lined with abandoned factories. The names were scratched off, but their shapes just screamed Detroit to anyone who'd ever driven past a rusting old plant. The game chat blew up with jokes at first. People were laughing at the coincidences. Streamers were milking it for reactions. Then someone posted an old satellite photo next to the game map, and all the laughter just stopped. The terrain wasn't inspired by those cities. It was asterisk them, rearranged, compressed, stitched together like a patchwork quilt of failure. And once that idea took root, it spread faster than the storm. Players started noticing everything. Subway entrances leading to solid rock, yellow cabs frozen in the middle of a crash, cracked sidewalks with those embedded stars. But the famous names were all worn away. The deeper people explored, the more the island seemed to respond. Sounds started drifting through the air that definitely weren't part of the game's soundtrack. Distant traffic horns, but there were no cars. The wind would carry these fragments of voices that felt more like a memory than an audio file. The first real wave of panic hit when a squad was camping inside a collapsed skyscraper. They heard applause, faint but unmistakable. It was echoing from the empty seats of a stadium carved into the ruins. A stadium that matched old photos of a city that had gone bankrupt and been abandoned years ago. And the game company? They said nothing. No lore drops, no loading screen tips, no dramatic cinematic reveal. Just silence. It was as if the game assumed we already knew what this was all about. And some people did, especially the older players. They recognized the outlines of neighborhoods they'd heard about from their parents and grandparents' places that promised a bright future, but only delivered debt. Places that burned bright for a moment and then just hollowed out. It got more personal the more you played. You'd see graffiti that wasn't just random art. It was specific. Dates were scratched into walls, and they lined up perfectly with real-world factory shutdowns, economic crashes, mass evacuations, the quiet, untelevised deaths of entire communities. The island didn't just look like these cities, it started to behave like them. Zones would decay unevenly. Infrastructure would fail without any warning. Loot would spawn in one area and then vanish from another, almost as if resources were being hoarded or just abandoned. And then the ghosts started showing up, not as enemies you could shoot, but just presences, translucent figures standing at bus stops, silhouettes in darkened office windows, echoes of crowds crossing streets that didn't exist anymore. Players quickly realized the ghosts didn't attack, they just watched. They'd react, subtly, to how you moved through their space. They'd get agitated if you blew up buildings, but they'd seem to calm down if you just slowed down. One team made a breakthrough. They figured out that staying alive wasn't just about shooting anymore. It was about respecting the environment. They started choosing routes that avoided unnecessary damage. They leave offerings of spare loot behind at certain spots where the air just felt heavier, and when they did this, the storm hesitated. Its advance actually slowed, as if it was reconsidering. Theories exploded online. Some said the island was a memorial. Others called it a punishment, a digital landfill for cities that history had judged as failures. Then, one day, the game updated without any announcement. The map got smaller, but the details became incredibly rich. Now you could hear entire conversations whispered through the ruins. Stories of layoffs, of families being forced to leave, of promises being broken. And a new pattern emerged. Players who ignored these whispers, who just kept playing the game like a normal shooter, found their matches getting harder, their weapons would jam more often. The cover they were hiding behind would suddenly collapse. But the players who listened, the ones Who moved carefully? Who followed the old, forgotten roads instead of just crashing through buildings? They survived longer. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when a player finally reached the highest point on the island of broken observation deck, overlooking all the zones at once. They realized the layout wasn't random at all. It was chronological. The oldest ruins were at the edges of the map, and the most recent failures were near the center. History was literally folding inward on itself, and the final circle? It always closed over the newest city that had been added to the map, a place that hadn't even finished failing yet in the real world, a place that was still recognizable, still raw, still painful. The game wasn't asking us to conquer these spaces. It was asking us to endure them, to move through the wreckage of ambition without making the same mistakes all over again. Because every time a match ended in a chaotic, violent free-for-all, the island got harsher in the next round, more unstable, more unforgiving. But matches where players cooperated, where they avoided destruction and respected the ghosts, those rounds were followed by calmer storms and wider, safer zones. Slowly, the community realized the truth wasn't hidden in some cutscene or dialogue box. It was in our own behavior. The island was built from everything the world had abandoned, and it was testing us. It was testing whether we would treat failure as something to be exploited or as something to be understood. And so, night after night, millions of us continue to drop in, fighting among the bones of forgotten cities, and the ghosts watch silently. They're waiting to see if this time, even if it's just in a game, we can finally learn how to survive without destroying what's already broken. Thanks for watching. If this story stuck with you, consider subscribing for more. See you in the next one.